When we started our deconstruction journey, Chelsea and I both expanded our knowledge and our worldview by reading books and following social media accounts of people like Dante Stewart, people like Nadia Boltz-Weber, Sarah Bessey, and Rachel Held Evans.
And even though Rachel Held Evans has passed, she started a conference in Minneapolis called the Evolving Faith Conference. It's a conference that Brandon and I would love to attend.
Definitely.
It would be a dream to be there. This conference is in October, and Brandon and I did the budget, and it looks like it'll be about $1,100 for us to go.
We've started this podcast, and we do it on our own, and we do it for you guys. We have some sponsors, but we really need your help with this.
Yeah, and so we've done the math, and we figured that if every one of our listeners just gives $8, then we could go to this conference for ourselves and for you. And I really believe that we could do it if we do it all together. So you'll find information in the link of our bio in this video for the next couple of episodes in our podcast so that you know how you can help us get to the Evolving Faith Conference.
Thank you in advance for the way that you help us.
We love you, dropouts.
Hi, I'm Brandon.
Hey, I'm Chelsea.
And welcome to the Religious Dropouts Podcast, episode...
1 star, episode 14.
Episode 1 star?
I went into something different. Episode 14. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, you said it's Religious Dropouts. I was going to say, the best 1-star podcast on the internet.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it just happened. So,
oh my God.
Instead of life updates, we have a life question, which we want to know from you guys too.
Definitely.
Maybe this could be the Spotify question that they could answer if you listen on Spotify or comment on YouTube or something. But
so I want to know, what's your dream appetizer sampler? And you only get to pick 3.
Oh my God. You didn't tell me before the podcast there was going to be a limit. It felt like maybe 5 or 6. You have to go first then. I need time now.
Okay.
3.
I'm going to keep mozzarella sticks.
Ew. They're so typical.
Oh, you know what I'll pick?
Okay.
Cheese curds.
Oh, way better.
Smaller portion, because if it's mozzarella sticks, if you have a group of 6 and there's 5.
Yeah, you're getting half.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
how am I supposed to solve that issue?
Exactly. But you can have 6 cheese curds and still feel good.
There could be like 30 cheese curds, and you can divide that between 5, 6, and 4 or whatever.
You're right. You're right. Yeah.
So cheese curds is on there. I like a potato skin, low key.
Me too. And everyone I go to eat with doesn't.
I know.
Oh gosh.
And a mini corn dog.
Oh. Okay, I'm so stressed out. I just have no. You guys don't understand. If I could do nothing but eat appetizers, I would.
Do you need me to give you like 2 sets of 3? Like you can design a dessert and
a dessert. I'm so done. Let me say, I love a potato skin. Like no matter what, I love potato skins, and I never get to get them because everybody that I ever go to dinner with, that's never the one they want. Out of the like selection of apps, they will never select the potato skins. And
they're
it
just
kills
not my
me.
people.
Yeah, it hurts. Well,
they are actually,
they are
unfortunately.
My people. Yeah, exactly. It sucks, but they are. So potato skins for sure. And this is super annoying, but I have to go cheese curd. Like we get cheese curds every time we go to B-dubs. Like
we need to have a podcast.
We should start
with somebody that's not.
Yeah.
What
do you guys
person?
like? No. So potato skins and cheese curds is just universal. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's true.
You can go to 4 if you're going to be different than me. But if you're going to be the same, then you're just as annoying.
No. What was your third one? No, I forget.
Mini corn dogs?
Oh, yeah. No. I will say my third one. I love a boneless wing, which is often an option for the sampler.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't get it as my meal. Whereas you probably, or like.
Right. That's why I wouldn't want it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
or
I
get
would
chicken as a meal because it's like one of my faves.
Yeah. So I would say a boneless wing, a potato skin, and a cheese curd. Yeah. Love that.
Yep.
That's my vibe. Side of ranch, side of sour cream.
Do you have any dips and chips that you like?
I do. There's a restaurant called Roosters. We went there with Jackie.
Yep.
And Brandon. We went there with Jackie and Brandon once.
They sound like great company.
We went there with Tyler. Tyler was there. But we got Roosters. First of all, I really love that place. If you guys want to sponsor the podcast. But they have really, really good chips and cheese, and they're like $4. Like you can't go wrong. And they're so good. Those thin chips that just like they're like kind of warm and they're so good. Yep. Just cheese, just simple chips and cheese.
I love that every time we mention somebody, some company, where we like, if you want to sponsor the podcast,
because it's worked. So
Oreo,
Nabisco. Anyways, we have keyboard warriors. So we're going to start out strong reading you this Warriors fight.
Keyboard warriors for Christ.
Issue 1 was something that we voted on in Ohio last week. And I don't really want to get into the issue because that's the point of keyboard warriors is not always like, I don't want to get into that really.
Right.
But it was just about a voting majority, and you guys can look it up. Issue 1 in Ohio, it did not pass, thank God, in my personal opinion. But so this article was just a very general news article from our 13 ABC Action News in Toledo. And it said, why it matters. What are our next steps after issue 1 has failed? And then, I'm not kidding, the second comment on the post, Walter says, imagine being so sick in the head that you want babies to die. I'd rather do some good and help people, but some are just hyper focused on their cults of death. Weird. I would say, Walter, you are the weird one, really. Yeah. But sure.
It's interesting, the cults of death thing.
It is because I would think that who he runs with is more like a cult.
And I'm not trying to say this is necessarily wrong or right or whatever, but it is odd because the symbol of Christianity is a murder weapon.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And some of them be cults. So it's just more so ironic. I'm not saying don't have a cross up in your church, but the reality is most of them be cults. You do have a murder weapon as your symbol.
Yeah. I think that when we talk about that issue, it was funny too because, and I guess funny is not the right word, but I say that a lot when I'm trying to like connect things. But the irony of him of Walter saying, even bringing up abortion, is that really issue 1, although it could be connected for sure, I understand because of what it was about. It wasn't an abortion law. Like that was not what it was. Right? It was a majority. It was not that.
But
so
if
it was
you're
just kind of,
if you have. If you're like a single issue voter, or you have like one issue with the entire political party,
that's right. You're going to make it about that. Yep.
Well, they probably have several issues with the political party, but they pick the one that is the easiest one for them to have a grief with and to rally other people around.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
It is an insane blessing and privilege to have Sycamore Creek Church as one of our sponsors on the Religious Dropouts podcast. When we launched this podcast, we never imagined accepting a church sponsorship. But this church really does just hit different. The community of people really do believe in Jesus and justice. They're also LGBTQ plus affirming, which means that all are included and welcome, no matter who we love. They put action and effort into working for racial equity, and they deeply care about being multiculturally curious, creative, and compassionate.
If there was a church the Religious Dropouts could preach a live sermon or podcast at, this would so be it. If church isn't for you, please ignore this ad. But if you are curious about what the body of Christ looks like, this Jesus-loving congregation is located in Lansing, Michigan, and is launching a campus in the Eastwood area on October 1st. Tell Pastor Tom that Brandon and Chelsea said hey.
So that did make me think about, you had kind of brought up this question when we talked about that keyboard warrior. And I kind of just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I wondered, why does the church always insert itself into politics? Now, I know this isn't Walter necessarily speaking on behalf of the church.
I love that he's our friend now. We just keep referencing him by name.
I love that Walt, I
love that Walty Jr. Anyway.
W Swizzle. What?
It's getting so much worse. Anyways,
if you guys don't know, Chelsea always I nicknames everybody, and they take the first letter of their first name, and then it's Diddy, Money, or
you got me with the money
or something else. It's Diddy Money.
One of my clients is C Money. Chandler, one of my favorite former students, is C Diddy. I do. It's always Money or Diddy, really. Yep. I think that those are the main two. But anyway, so the church.
So the question is, why does the church always insert itself into politics? Is that necessary?
Or they bring it back to politics, or they bring it back to the church every issue.
They're not political, but they know God's stance and the biblical authority on everything.
Yeah, that's so good. I think I love the prompt that leads into our conversation today. that we're going to get into in a second, because I just feel like it's so hard that no matter what is going on in the world, somehow Christianity is superior.
Yeah.
Like no matter what the issue is, no matter what is going on.
Oh, they're not asking for the Hindu like
right. Like you don't see that
context of anything. They're like,
they are always just this very moral police. It's so hard to explain, but it's like, if you know, like you get it. Like, it's just no matter what the issue is, like this issue that we just did, this keyboard warrior,
right.
It is always somehow turned into like
Yep.
a church issue. Like all of a sudden the church has stake in it. And it's like, wait a second.
And everybody is against the church on this one.
Yeah.
And
the church is always the victim.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah. And
always.
This world is getting so worldly that we have to address these things. Definitely. Because we're going to grow up into a world that is going to be full of doom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which, yeah. So this is interesting because it almost doesn't seem like it flows, but because of this keyboard warrior, Brandon and I obviously don't just show up to the podcast and make it up as we go, right? Like we do actually write out and really come to you guys with things that we have seen you write into us, with questions that you've called us about, voicemails that maybe we never play, but we listen to. And so one of the questions that we both sat with last night that was actually really difficult for both of us, because it is probably the first time we've ever brought up this conversation on the podcast. And it is kind of this conversation around reproductive rights, around what our friend, the keyboard warrior, brought up with abortion. And as much as I feel like I wish we could avoid it, I wish no one knew how we felt about it. I wish we could stay neutral. I think that's what every church we've been a part of has done in a way. I mean, obviously they're pro-life, but then they also try to paint this very like all things to all people without being very clear.
Right.
And I think it's important for Brandon and I to use our voices on this podcast with you to connect with you in a way where we share our heart and where we're at. So
maybe we start with sharing our heart, kind of like just a short, like, here's our stance.
Yeah.
And then maybe just if you would share your story about like maybe kind of what brought you there.
Yeah.
And then I could do the same.
I would love that. Yeah. Yeah. So where's your stance at?
I would say currently I'm pro-choice. I feel like I allow myself to have my views shift as I learn more, and I learn from people of different perspectives. I allow there to be tension, and I can explain why after, but you want to go?
Yeah. I would say I am pro-choice. But that's recent. Like within the last year.
Okay.
Year or two, maybe.
Yeah.
That's very new for me to have moved from pro-life, which I realize this might be dumb, but when I first entered the church, that meant nothing to me. So I'm going to speak to you like I wish somebody would have spoke to me. Pro-choice is that you do advocate for women to be able to have that right. If they need or desire to have an abortion, that they get to do that. And pro-life is that you, in no capacity, believe that women should have that, and that right belongs to the government, really. And the courts. And so just so you know, we're clear on those.
And I want to even go in further and say, I'm pro-life in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
Pro Black Lives Matter, pro like
I love that disclaimer. I do.
Pro the lives of LGBTQ plus being sacred. Don't like the death penalty. I'm not really one that supports war. I think we should do a lot of things in that way.
I'm kind of a pacifist myself. Yeah. So I see that.
But I think why I want to make this distinction is because so many people want to say when you are pro-choice, or they have to be pro-life, but yet all of those issues I just listed, it's weird where their lines don't cross. Like a police officer can have the knee on the neck for an awfully long time of a black man.
Yeah.
And they'll be like,
for you to care so much about lives.
And they have no care for people that claim pro-life.
I agree.
And my pro-choiceness is more so as a white man. I have to be aware of I'm learning this question of why does the church always insert itself?
Mhm.
I'm learning what is mine to say,
Mm.
what is mine not to say,
That's
what is
beautiful.
mine to do, and what is mine not to do.
Yeah.
And this is one of those issues where I won't be put in that situation.
Yeah. What is your responsibility
Yeah.
to this issue? Well, a lot smaller than what mine might be.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I don't have the reproductive
Mhm.
organs to be able to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
My wife does, and like if we cross that line, I would think we get to
Mhm.
make that decision together. But
Yeah.
but
But you default more to her. Right.
it's a huge 75-25.
Yeah.
It like, and she would say it's a 50-50 probably.
Right. I get that.
Because that's marriage. But
Right.
I know my role
Yeah.
is making the way for her.
Yeah. Which is just beautiful.
to be able to have her voice louder, her decision louder,
Mhm.
because I just know naturally the amount of space that by default I will take up.
Yeah.
Because I have some strong,
And who will
I have
listen
some
to
strong
you.
thoughts, and who will
Yeah.
listen to me, and I
Mhm.
know what I bring because I'm confident. I know when I enter into a space, I know how I could believe or think on
Mhm.
something, but I've been for years now.
Yeah.
Training myself to know when to dial myself down.
Yeah. In not a way that hides who you are.
Nope.
In a way that gives people that don't have representation more
Yes.
representation.
Yep.
So I think that's a beautiful distinction. You don't step aside because you don't matter. You
Right.
don't step aside because your voice doesn't matter or it's not important. You step aside to give people that don't have representation better opportunities for their
Right.
voice to be heard.
Well, and just like our podcast, we have 2 mics with 2 different volumes.
Yeah.
Even though there's one output,
Yeah.
they'll only hear one mix at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But there are times where I will have to turn down my mic theoretically or
Yeah.
not speak to be
Yeah.
able to give you more voice.
Yeah.
And so like that's where I'm at
Yeah.
with that. I can explain.
How'd you get there?
You should explain first.
Okay. It's so weird because I was a foster parent, and so I saw so many situations where I had babies that were born into the world that were not taken care of, that were in severe neglect, that were in horrible situations, while I watched millions, or I guess in my context, hundreds, I don't see millions, but hundreds of Christians feel no moral responsibility to be foster parents. So the irony to me that I was seeing my pro-lifeness had a responsibility. I am at this time in this season, I'm talking 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was pro-life in full-time ministry. And in that position, I really struggled with, I knew I had to be a foster parent because these babies needed somebody. And if I was pro-life, I had a responsibility to care for the life. And I watched hundreds of people around me not feel that same burden. And that was really frustrating to me. So I'll just say right out the gate, I really started to wrestle even then with what does pro-life really mean to these people, because they're not putting in the work. So I don't understand. What does it mean? And then in the same breath, like Brandon said, I was watching them affirm the death penalty, and they were non-affirming in denominations where they didn't affirm the lives of LGBTQ people. They also supported the cop more than they supported the murder of the black man. So I just kept seeing these things that started my trajectory of saying, what the hell does pro-life really mean to these people?
Yeah.
And if I adopt that ideology, what am I saying to the world? And what am I saying to people? And then I had people in my life that started sharing. I don't know if it was out of comfortability. I never asked ever. Out of these weird, sacred, beautiful, broken places, women started sharing with me their abortion stories. And so I have 3 women that shared these over the course of these years, right? So I started to look at my life and say, I've now heard of women's personal story, and now I have probably 30 abortion stories that I have at this time. And then I've also been really wrestling with what it means to be pro-life. So then I went to this conference. It was called the Nazarene Youth Conference. And I was sitting with a group of pastors, and we're playing a game, and this game asks a bunch of random questions. And let's say there was 10 of us in the room, right? Just because I don't want to isolate the names or anything.
Right.
I don't want to give anyone like, oh, I know who that was. So there was 10 of us hanging out, and this question pops up on the screen, and the game was really weird. I don't want to get into explaining it because it's just a waste of time, but the question popped up.
Spin the bottle.
Exactly. That's it. How'd you get there?
Gross.
Also hard pass, but we were sitting there and the question popped up: are you pro-choice or pro-life? And of course, I immediately put pro-life. Right? I'm sitting and keep in mind also the Nazarene denomination is also pro-life.
Right.
So all of a sudden, then the point of the game is that you want to guess how many people voted what, right? And then you get points based on that. So of course, I voted that 100% of the people would say pro-life. Then the answer pops up on the screen. And I was the only pastor that selected pro-life. And I was like, wait a fucking second. Like my world was rocked. And immediately all eyes were on me in the room. And I was like, why the hell am I the minority? Someone explain it,
right.
you know? And so without speaking 30 minutes on this, it opened up this conversation in the room of all these perspectives of, well, my wife had to have an abortion medically.
Wow.
My best friend had an abortion, you know, all these stories. And I was like, oh my God, like I really feel wrong. And I really feel like biblically, although I believe life is sacred, this is not the way of Jesus. So being pro-choice, hearing these stories, empathizing with these situations, and believing that Jesus is in all those situations, it was really in that moment 4 years ago that I changed my stance.
Wow. This is always such an interesting, this like pro-choice, pro-life thing.
Yeah.
Because the world kind of asks you to have like this definitive,
you're so right.
You have to pick this path. Like I'm either a Bears fan or a Lions fan or whatever. Like,
does the world ask you to do that though, or does the church ask you to do that?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say the church. I would redefine what I just said.
Because I've never felt that from the world. But every time I felt that pressure from the church.
Right. And it's hard because a lot of our world has been the church.
That's right.
So you guys are watching me deconstruct right now, being like, man, that's a tough one. because when people say the world, especially Christians, what's that mean? Like, is that Kroger? Is that the Starbucks you go to? Like, I don't sit with the world actually every day. Whoever that entity is, that sounds as vague as the Illuminati to be real.
Exactly.
In the gay agenda.
Exactly. That is the world for sure. And the Church of Satan.
What happened for me is that why I wanted to say it feels like I have to pick I'm either this or that. I'm either left Twix or right Twix.
I'm done.
I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, no, so true.
But it's been so fluid.
Yeah.
It's been so complicated.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you 2 or 3 moments where that triggered question. Mm-hmm. And then it allowed it to be more fluid. Mm-hmm. So I sat in the car with a really close friend that she explained that she's a Christian and that she's pro-choice, and I remember being pro-life and being like wow, like I believe you to be a Christ follower. I believe you to be honoring of God. So I believe you to care about life. And and that it was that moment where I was like, oh, dissonance, as I've said before. But you know, I think like a summer later, I had a close friend named Matt that broke down that thing I mentioned earlier of like, Matt, I think, was pro-life, and he said, but I'm all of it. So I mourn an abortion, but I know it's not my decision. And I would say I'm the same way. I think what's complicated is everybody is like, oh, so you love killing babies because you're pro-choice, and I was like,
what was Walter's comment? You're the baby or the
baby killer, or
baby murderer cult or something?
Yeah, baby murderer cult. And I'm like,
I'm not that.
How can you? It's not that simple.
Exactly.
I can mourn something, but understand it's not mine. It's not mine to do. But Matt ended up saying like all this stuff about the death penalty, supporting like murder or war and violence against Black lives, violence against LGBTQ plus lives, like, and it started to make me think like, and not people that are pro-life not voting for policies that actually support moms and families and welfare and things like that, the programs that help you, that's what they don't want. They don't want to solve it in the systemic way.
Absolutely.
They want to solve it they want to fight for these things that are like vague, and they get to call it pretty, but they don't want to roll up their sleeves and actually address the disparity that would maybe solve what they want to solve. That
is at a systemic level.
Yes. And I guess I would say that's my complexity, is I would want to solve it on the systemic level. I want to do that now. But like this conversation with Matt kind of changed some things for me. I watched a video that I'll link in the bio, but it was a video it was conversations with Emmanuel Acho, who's famous for doing the conversations with a Black man. Have you seen any of these videos?
No.
He's sat with people like Matthew McConaughey, Lil Wayne, Chip and Joanna Gaines, and he'll have uncomfortable conversations about race, but he did this one-off special one around abortion. And I watched it, and he makes himself the accent piece in the room, and he brings other people in, and he hears their stories, and he asks tough questions, and they get to ask tough questions of him. And he sat with 4 women that got abortions for different reasons. And I was mind blown to see that posture and to see the heart he had to be like, I don't always understand. I need to. It's not always the situations I paint it to be.
Yeah.
And I want to hear where the heart of a woman is when she has to make this decision.
Yeah.
In a way that only sitting here in the flesh and listening to you will bring.
Yeah. And
I really felt that through the screen. I guess he got to sit there in the flesh and listen to them, but I got to kind of be along for the ride in the video, and I think that changed me a lot.
Yeah.
So those are little moments that I just remember the needle being pressed a little bit.
Yeah. I think I was looking up, just as you were finishing speaking there, I was looking up a book that was so interesting because it has nothing to do with abortion. It's called Beating Guns by Shane Claiborne. But it is so pro-life that and not in the sense of how we think of it traditionally in the Christian church, not pro-life, anti-abortion.
Right.
It's pro-life, anti-gun. But that book had so many references about why, about peace and about choosing peace and choosing life, and how to really work to support the right policies, and to why if you really care so much about life, how many other issues you should care about. And so I thought about that book because when you shared Matt's story about I thought about that. So I was just looking that up, but that's not, the video is a way better resource, but I also love that book when we talked about that pro-life ideology of what does it look like to be fully pro-life. But I love the comment that you made about how it isn't black and white. And one of the things I have learned about reproductive rights and the conversation surrounding abortion is I am always learning. Like literally every time I think I have a pretty solid idea of what I know and what I believe to be true about that issue, something just slams me in the face, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. And one of the biggest things for me that I always struggle with too, because I think it's fair to talk about the other side, the anti-abortion aspect of my heart, because my daughter is 4 years old. And for those of you that don't know, I adopted my daughter from birth. Okay. And her biological mom, first of all, is amazing. Okay. That's about all I'll say about her. But my God, I hope someday we can bring her on this podcast and you will hear her story.
Oh my God.
But she found out too late. Okay. She couldn't get an abortion because it was too late. And the thought, I'm trying to, the thought that if she would have been able to make that choice in time, I wouldn't know my baby, who God ordained to be mine. And that is so scary. Yeah. And so there is a part of my heart that when one of my friends came to me and said that she made a mistake, she slept with someone that she wished she wouldn't, and she made the decision to have an abortion, I listened to her with grace and empathy. She was too young. She was scared. And I prayed that God would hold her so tight in that choice. But I wept and I mourned the second I got in my car from sitting with her, because I thought, whose Rory could that have been? And so I want to be so vulnerable here to tell you that I am pro-choice, and I'm thankful to God that she had a choice for her life to not be so broken by this fear of pregnancy that she had in that moment, and how horrible that decision was for her to have to make. But I also want to be honest that it is still gut-wrenching. As a woman that agreed and didn't agree with her choice, to have to sit in that space and think about my own situation. And so I just want to say, like, to our listeners, it is so real where you just said, you can't pick a team, because you really cannot. It is impossible for you to sit and say, I'm pro-choice or I'm pro-life. And if you do, and there's no tension for you, you are not following Christ. And I can say that with every beat of my heart, that there is no possible way you are truly following Jesus and you have this opinion with no other questions. Right. There has got to be a tension there. So although I vote pro-choice, there is always a tension and a grief in my heart every time I vote that way. And then I have to bust my ass putting my feet to the damn ground to systemically help these mothers, to serve in my homeless community, to help make sure they know how to get their WIC and make sure they get to those appointments, to make sure those babies have affordable daycare, to make sure those women have affordable or access to healthcare. Like, I have a job to do every time I vote pro-choice. I also, if I have the tension of grieving that pro-life decision, right, I have a responsibility to get my ass working for those women to have what they need if they choose that life.
And both people would, whether people want to make it complicated or not, both pro-choice people and pro-life people see this as an issue.
Absolutely.
That's the only reason it's a buzz.
Absolutely.
So what I would say is, every day that we've spent thinking about that Paul decision, we should also be out getting ready, just
Absolutely.
like you. When you're ready to go check that box, you have work on the other side. I would challenge everybody to make sure that they have work on the other side.
And if you don't know what the
and
work
myself
is,
too, for the record,
right. And if you don't know what that work is, find an organization that, and I don't just mean Oaks, even where the level that you're at, Brandon. Find do a Google search. I'm pregnant. What do I do?
Right.
Find that organization, give them a damn phone call. And I bet they've got a list a mile long of volunteer positions of how you can help that support those women and those babies.
Don't let the weight of the issue weigh heavy on you. Let an organization that knows what they're doing
definitely
drag you along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. In your fight for justice on this one.
Yeah. So I think, speaking of justice, speaking of organization, speaking of support, speaking of
fight,
I don't know how we're going to, there's no way to segue into this, but let's take a deep breath here. Would you join us? Brandon held that for so long, I almost died. But
3 in, 3 up,
that's some
4
yoga,
out.
That's some yoga breath right there. But let's just take a breath and give each other grace in this conversation. Mm-hmm. There is so much more to be talked about, but this is where we want to be with you. And I think it was important. And I think that's about all we're going to do today with that. But we do have something that leads us into today to Big Mad Energy. So let's go there.
What y'all mad about now? Y'all really pressed over that shit? Wow. Big Mad. Y'all got Big Mad Energy. I just want an excuse to hate.
You want
What
to
you
open
mad
it up?
about now?
Oh
You
my
were
God.
like, "Da-da-da."
I love that song, dude. Okay. And then if you want to open up,
Ooh, oh my gosh.
I love that song.
Chelsea every time.
Every
I love that
time.
song.
It's my favorite. It is my favorite. Okay, anyway.
We want to talk about the Montgomery fight.
Oh my
Oh, I don't know if you guys have been on TikTok. I mean, this
Dude.
might be coming out too late to.
Oh, yeah.
But hopefully the TikToks are still rolling in.
I hope so.
So there's a million little funny facts about this thing. God. Even though this is deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
It's also like
hilarious and amazing.
Yeah. So you're about to witness two white people journeying into
two white people that would have protected the black man
yeah.
and beat the shit out of the other white people. That's
Right.
where we're sitting. Okay.
Yeah. And we just think this is so funny. We have to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's big mad energy because you will link the video.
Yeah.
But these white people were out sailing, which white people.
Yeah.
And they wanted to dock their boat somewhere.
They be big boating.
They be big boating.
Yep. And it's the audacity and the authority of a team of white people that would park their boat where they are not allowed.
Right. And the dock authority, this black man is saying, no, this spot you can't park in.
Yep.
And two white guys get into this altercation and then one throws a big fist and that brings like 6 other white dudes over and they all like animals start fighting this dude.
Yeah. All of these Popeye looking bros come just, I mean, throwing fists at this black man. And this is where Brandon and I kind of just, I want to take a minute to say, this is where we say it's disturbing.
Definitely.
It is gut wrenching to watch because for that 30-second, well, they only probably got about 20 solid seconds in, to be honest, before this whole
our stomachs
team,
aren't comfortable with those 30 seconds. Like,
because he's on the ground in this group of these 5-6 white men are just, I mean, and like Brandon said, we'll link the original video, but they're kicking him, they're punching. I mean, they're really over. And think about the real issue. They're doing this over the fact that they did not have enough white privilege in this moment to park their boat where it was completely illegal to dock your boat.
And a black face and a black voice isn't going to be enough.
Isn't going to be the authority.
That's
to me.
not authority enough.
Right.
For them to respect and go find another slice of dock.
Yep.
But instead, they know that they have the authority over that individual.
Yep. And so here's where it's hilarious, though. The black man in the video at one point, right when I don't know if it's right after the scene or the chain of events gets a little muddy for me here, but he throws up his hat.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost like, and now, of course, if we're a few weeks out from this incident.
Oh, God.
The throwing the hat is like this call, right? And all of these black people that were watching, that are filming, you see people of color all over the place. Just there's actually a man skipping, like he was waiting for the call to beat the shit out of these white people. But the beautiful part is they did it. They didn't until the black man was down. That's what I think is beautiful. It's not these going to his defense because he's yelling.
It's not
unethical.
Yeah.
It's
what's that musical where they fight?
West Side Story.
West Side Story. It's not West Side Story.
Right. They literally,
where it's your gang versus mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These people wait, and the second that they see this man, the beauty of watching this community of color come together to protect this man. And I also want to say that in the very beginning of the video, you also see he looks to be probably like in his early 20s, maybe younger, and we should have looked that up. But the worker that was not a security worker, but that was working with the black man that works for the company
tried to help
cover
his body. Probably.
And he was walking over. Yeah. And I mean, he didn't stand a chance. Right. But he tried. But all of these people of color
8 Popeyes looking
dude. And so, I mean, there is a grandpa. It's funny because they called him the grandpa, but he's actually like 42, which that could be grandpa age. So, but he takes the folding chair and he hits the dude with the folding chair who's coming to fight. It is just the funniest, coolest moment. But my favorite part of this story is all of the videos that people made.
Oh yeah.
Recreating the incident using Jason Aldean's what's the
Try
song?
That in a Small Town.
Try That in a Small
I was about to ask you guys if you guys knew if the town was small enough for Jason's song.
And it's so funny because they're like, yeah, they did try that in a small town, and all of the. So my favorite part is the reclaiming in so many ways.
Yeah.
Of this ridiculous racist song, and we covered why in episode like whatever 11 or something. So we did talk about it. But
so if you're skipping episodes and you haven't listened to 12, that's on you.
Yeah, because we did talk about why it's actually racist. But and so to watch these people reclaim this song,
the TikToks are so good. We couldn't put together a playlist, but if we could, that'd be amazing.
It was just
there might be a compilation video.
Yeah, we've got to.
I love the MOK memorial.
Oh my God, with the folding chair.
And
we
then
shared
somebody
on our Instagram.
photoshopped the folding chair to be looking like stone, like carved out of stone.
And when we're recording this, unfortunately, the black man with the folding chair did turn himself in recently. Yeah. But he's getting, I think, the least amount of charges, it looks like, because it was
he's America's hero.
He is literally the hero. We want to sponsor him. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
We will pay his fines. But the Detroit police did a really funny TikTok, and they reenacted it, and then they were like, "But a folding chair is not a weapon." And it's like black policemen reenacting the folding chair incident, but then saying like, "But also, please don't do."
I like this one where this black man was walking around his house like a sheriff or whatever to some like spicy music or something, and he created like a holster for his chair, like some straps on his belt, and he's walking like like. Mess around, find out kind of energy.
They're so good.
Oh my gosh.
We have someone that sent us in a message last week, actually. The pause.
Tell me this, but don't switch the topic because I have one more thing to add.
No, I'm not.
Okay, perfect.
I was going to say that she sent in a message that said, when you guys say fuck around and find out on the podcast, it's my favorite thing in the whole world. That's so right. I just love that we just got to slip that into this Montgomery incident. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Alicia, our editor, told us that chairs are selling out.
Oh, yeah.
They're selling out in the stores.
Yes.
Those folding chairs.
Yes. Oh, so funny.
So I thought that was a little tidbit. So if you want a folding chair, you
better
should probably
go get
one.
It now. Yeah. Use code religion. No, I'm just kidding.
They're harder to find than toilet paper in 2020.
But I want to say that in this conversation about Montgomery, the hilarity of that, the devastation of it. I mean, like I said, the video is really hard to watch, but then it's also so cool and so funny. And there's a lot of emotions when you're following the story. But on the conversation that we mainly had this episode, which really was about reproductive rights or abortion, I think a lot of times there is suffering on all sides of that issue. It's the suffering of the women who are in those spaces, who have to make those decisions or who are holding the hand of someone making those decisions. It's in the men, in the lives of those women. It's in the policymakers and the judges and the courts. It's in the pastors and the churches. Yeah. And it's in the dropouts, just like you and I, that are wrestling through how the hell do we talk about this? Yeah. And a lot of times we end up suffering alone. A lot of the times we don't have anyone to talk to. We don't have spaces to share. And so Brandon's wife, Jackie, actually helped us to navigate through this book of prayer. Yeah. And what the lives that we live, is that what it's
the called? Lives we actually have.
Yeah. And I really wanted Brandon to close us today with one of the prayers that we kind of found in this book together. The three of us tribing it out, looking for something. And I just thought it'd be a beautiful way to end the podcast today.
All of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
For when you suffer alone. I see you there suffering alone with the illness or pain that lingers, though friends do not or cannot. You in isolation, locked in or locked out. You, the caregiver, struggling in the certainty that there is not enough strength, time, or resources. You who counsel others in their trauma, but suffer deeply from your own. You who are grieving losses too many to name, too complex or unbecoming to speak out loud. Wow. Blessed are you, dear one, searching for someone to understand, to see your wounds and your hope for healing. You are seen as you walk through this hard and lonely road. Blessed are you, because your loneliness speaks a deep truth. You were never meant to do this alone. God, comfort us, guide us, that our hope for more, a prayer which will be answered, might be protected too.
dropouts, would you know today that no matter what it is that you are going through in this community, in this space, you are never, ever, ever suffering alone, and that we go with you, alongside you, and as much as we can pave the way for you to know what it's like to have community and support in any of these spaces that you're in.
Yep. And our numbers are real numbers. Our accounts are real accounts. You'll reach real people, me and Chelsea. And,
that's
and
right.
Although we say that we don't go along, that's a literal promise to you if you ever need us. So
that's right.
We love you. Have a good week.
Hey fam, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Religious Dropouts podcast. We hope it gave you a space to breathe, to laugh, and connect. It's our hope that as you journey along with us, that you too might find yourself saying, damn, it feels good to be a dropout. Be sure to check out our show notes for links to anything mentioned in this episode, including ways to connect with us on social media. We'd also love for you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with anyone you know who might want to join our community. You are loved. Have a great week.